Welcome back to the Backseat Startup Podcast with your host, Andrew Hutton.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Backseat Startup. I'm Andrew, and I'm on with Dessi McEntee, the founder of Mimicry Solutions. Really excited for this episode today. So excited to dig into what Dessi is building and also to do what we do on the Backseat Startup Podcast, which is share knowledge and wisdom and advice to everyone on the internet by finding real world questions on Reddit and solving them, digging into them, and sharing the wisdom of founders, sharing with founders. So excited to dig in. The startup that Dessi is building is really, really cool because it's something that is just deep into her bones. She is the right founder to be building this and also just tackling one of those big, sticky, tough challenges that, frankly, I doubt anyone has ever thought of until she tells you about it. So that's one of my early kind of signals for what a good, awesome early stage startup is it not obvious? But then once you hear it, you're like, dang, I'm excited. So Dessi, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on and digging in today.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate the intro.
Of course. So tell everyone a little bit about Mimicry Solutions and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, Mimicry Solutions is a really great startup that we established. We are building solutions that will generate the tox readouts of animal studies. So the pharmaceutical industry right now, everybody who has to develop a new drug and bring it to the clinic and to patients has to use animals in their toxicology studies to assess the safety. There's no alternatives to that right now, but we are building the first. So our platform, Artemis, will allow us to generate these endpoints and create a more robust safety assessment for new drugs that actually help animals and patients alike.
So good. So there's so many threads I want to pull on, and we could probably spend the entire podcast talking about it. We just did kind of riff and I got to really understand what you're building. This is an AI-powered startup, and that's obviously new. You also mentioned that there's some regulatory changes that make what you're doing relevant or even possible for the first time. Talk about that, because that kind of shift that makes this the time is just it's just so important. So yeah, tell us why now is the time to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah, this is an opportunity that hasn't existed before. So in December 2022, the FDA changed the law that allowed us to be able to bring drugs to the clinic without assessing them in animals. Obviously, we are somewhat of a long way from that, but I think we are going to get there a lot faster now that this door has opened. And with the advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning, it just gives us even more leverage to be able to actually do this efficiently and sufficiently. And we also have just a lot of historical data for small molecule drugs, but also the biotechs have been booming in the past few years. So there is just a lot of data coming in, all electronic, all very well done. And now is the time. We're ready to go for it.
That's what's up. And this isn't like you didn't just read these articles about the FDA changes and decide this is what I want to do. This is your field. So tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and why, you're the one to do this.
Yeah, I've always loved animals. I'm an animal lover. And so I got a degree in animal science from UConn, my bachelor's degree. And I've always been doing things around animals since I can remember. So when I graduated, I had to get a job, and Pfizer was right down the road. So I got a job at Pfizer. And that I was actually doing the animal testing. So it really weighs on me because I've put down a lot of animals in my life in the name of science and everything like that. And I always said that if I got the chance to be able to change that status quo, that I would. And now over 10 years later, I've gotten the professional and education and scientific background that I need to really do this. And so with this new opportunity that's kind of brought in now, I'm able to kind of grasp onto that and just take off.
That's really, I love it. I loved it. Also, UConn, I'm from Connecticut. Love it. Go Huskies. Yeah. Every 5 years win the national basketball, the men's championship. It's just like clockwork. Last question before we dive into the kind of what we're going to get into with the pod here, which is where are you all in your journey, right? Tell everyone a little bit about what you're up to, what you're next, your early stage. Just give us some bearings of where you are in the process.
Yeah, so we have, it's me and our co-founder, Lon, who's our CTO. So we will be kicking this thing off. We are about to kick off a pre-seed fundraising round in August. We are actually now patent pending as of this week. So that's a big plus as well. And we're just ready to kind of start building this thing and getting it done. And we hopefully by the middle of next year, we intend to have a really robust MVP and funding to be able to do so.
That's it. That's exciting. And again, I just love, I think, in this moment in time in the world of startups and venture, we're well into the phase where software is ubiquitous, software is everywhere. I think a lot of folks in the world of venture and startups are moving towards these almost, I'll call them harder problems, right? Problems that touch the real world, problems that involve data and of course AI. But yeah, like real world problems with huge markets that, like I said, I doubt you knew about this beforehand, right? But there's a stage in the clinical process that uses a lot of animals, and Desi's working to remove that. And that just reduces costs, increases efficiency, increases quality, safety, 1,000 things. So there's a ton of promise here. Very cool. So now you know Desi, now you know what she's up to with Mimicry Solutions. Let's switch gears to the meat and potatoes of what we do on the Backseat Startup Podcast. Desi, let me share my screen real fast, and we're gonna go look at Reddit and hopefully only find really uplifting content. Talk to users before even starting the MVP. How on earth do I do that? That's solid. That's solid.
Yeah, I like that one. I have a lot.
Let's dig in. Perfect. So for everyone listening, and if everything we just looked at gets cut out, let me tell you what we're diving into. Talking to users. Let me click in actually. Talk to users before even starting on the MVP. Yes, that is a piece of advice I would say blanket to everybody. Talk to users before starting on the MVP. How on earth do I do that? It also assumes you know why you're doing that. That's probably a question we can discuss if it's not clear. I get the general idea. Talk to potential users will more clearly inform you of the problem and what your MVP should look like. Actually, that's a pretty good articulation of why you should do it. If you don't understand the problem really well, if you don't understand what you should be building, why are you building? But there's a huge problem. How can I ever find strangers who are willing to randomly talk with another stranger? That's also kind of the crux of the issue. The thing is, none of my family, friends, coworkers have this problem, so I have to start with strangers right away. That itself is an issue. If you don't literally know anybody who has the problem, I'm kind of curious how you know the problem exists. Maybe you have it, right? But that's a thing I would dig on. Here, let's not go too deep. Desi, where does your head go? You said this is something that you've thought about or dealt with, or how do you start to answer this question for our Reddit user here?
Yeah, so this stood out to me because a lot of the feedback that we've gotten has been, where's your traction? Have you talked to people, LOIs? How do you know people are going to buy this, etc.? And it's hard. It depends on the industry that you're in, because our specific technology, I am the user, I'm the customer. So when someone's like, how do you know someone's going to want to buy this? I'm like, well, I would buy this. And I know that it's not there yet because this is what I do. This is my livelihood. And so it doesn't give a lot of value for me to go talk to users, because I would say, if this existed, would you use it? I already know the answer. So having someone who is the actual user build the product is a gold mine, obviously. But it can also be very limiting, because how do you talk to users when you already know the answer?
So I'm hoping this person has that experience, that they're the customer, and that's why they've gotten to this point, right? They know I would buy it, I would use it, I can just document my own requirements, right?
Right.
I'll tell you, whenever I hear that, whenever I'm listening to a founder, obviously that's probably one of the best places to start. And not just I kind of have the problem, but I would buy this, right? Exactly. And I know what it would take. Actually, let me just push. This is almost like a mini session, right? Having the problem, important. Knowing how it would like fit into your process and knowing how the solution would work, next level important. Knowing how it fits into the business case, right? That's next level. Knowing how the software gets purchased, right? So I see you nodding along, right? So you're pretty confident you know how those things go for Mimicry. I was in the middle of a thought. My computer just had a little brain fart, but we are back. Where was I going? I was just talking about, really understanding your customer. Oh, but your thought, let me pull the thread on what you said, Dessi, which was that, yes, when you're the customer, sometimes it is hard to go find the next customer. But to me, that's really the next piece of validation is you have the problem. So how do you know other companies operate the same way? How do you know other companies have the budgets that you do? How do you know other companies, all those questions that say like, you can't just sell it to one, you have to sell it to 100, right? But you're from the industry. So how do you go about finding those answers and talking to those people?
Exactly. My network is huge. And so I've worked at big pharmas. I work at a startup now. I worked at small companies. And I have a big network of partnerships and colleagues and other toxicologists and things like that. So I can easily leverage them when the time comes. I know that when we build this, if it does what we say it's going to do, it'll sell it. It'll be a wildfire approach. Basically, it'll sell itself. There's nothing else out there. So that's why it's hard for me to go out and say, hey, Billy, would you do this if this existed? And obviously Billy's going to say, yeah.
you're that's a really interesting spot where you're like, that's a dumb conversation. I know the answer is yes. He would look at me like, of course, right. You know this, Dessi. Like we talk about this or whatever, right?
Exactly. It takes credibility away from me as an industry expert to ask somebody, you know what I mean?
That's really interesting. That's fascinating. So let's try to answer this question. So let's say you didn't know, maybe they were just putting our hats on, right? Where you didn't necessarily know friends, colleagues, 10 years of experience in an industry, right? This is what he's copping to, it's not my friends, family, and coworkers. How do you find strangers? I have thoughts, but where does your head go on that kind of thing?
I mean, all the cities are very heavily populated with strangers on the street. And that's kind of where my first thought goes. Just go start asking people. And, you know, if you are building something and you don't know where to find users, become a user. You know, just become a user yourself, become a customer yourself. If you're building something that you wouldn't use, like we've talked about before, or that you wouldn't know how to use, I mean, that's a huge gap to me right there. You really have to know what you're building and why.
I'll build on that because one way I would frame go be a user or go like start to kind of get into that mode would also put you into contact with other users. I mean, you could be doing it from this like the isolation of your house, right? It depends on how the thing goes, right? But if you're you know, whether it's digitally or physically, you're going to find yourself, you know, bumping shoulders and connecting with other folks who are using this and
your competitors. Go be a user for your competitor.
Yeah. It's like, and like, I can just think of like a few tactical things. If we're just talking, I'm just gonna think about something I bought recently, like an air conditioner, right? If I'm thinking about an air conditioner, right, I'm going to go build an air conditioner. Let's say that's a silly thing, but let's say I did that, right? And I want to go understand buyers of air conditioners. I would probably go troll Reddits, you know, Wirecutter, right? I would go look for people's comments that says like, hey, I see this, all the different forums on the internet. That's actually one really interesting spot to find people. Forums on the internet where people are going through the buying process for your thing, or maybe if it's more complicated than just like buying an air conditioner, there's probably forums on the internet where people are like discussing, right? Which one is the best one, or how do I use this?
So many reviews out there.
Yeah. And if there's a forum in a community of people talking about like how to best do a thing, right? Again, like air conditioners is really limiting, but like if I'm talking about like modding my truck, or if I'm talking about like, doing projects on my house, like all those things in that community. Now it's a Facebook group. Now it's maybe a Slack group. Again, Reddit is literally a community platform. Like all the people who are asking those questions are potential customers.
Yeah.
And there's always a DM feature. There's always a way to reach out and say, hey, I'm a founder or a potential founder in the space. Could we hang? Could we chat? Could I learn from you? I don't know. I've actually never found people, everyone's busy, but if you show up as a founder who's curious, most people want to at least have a conversation, right? They're at least interested in connecting.
You may have to message a few people. You know, it may not be, I'm going to message 5 people and get it. You may have to do 100. I mean, that's just the life of a founder, right?
Yes, I'm glad you said that. It's at least 100, right? It's probably way more than 100, and you probably need to get ready for rejection quite a bit, right? I mean, that's a whole area, right? Like founders need to it's not enjoy, but you need to be very ready for. And I've seen founders do this. I've seen founders take the fact that they're about to go, sometimes it's fundraising, you're about to go do that, right? Sometimes it's talking to customers, and you know you're going to get 99 no's before a yes, or you're going to get a lot of why'd you contact me? Yeah, right? You are going to get those, right? But here's what a founder did, someone that I work with in day one. She reframed her mind that says, my goal is to get 10 no's a week. And this was actually a fundraise. And she said, if I succeed, and I can pop a beer and have like a celebration when I get to 10 no's. And so she and obviously you have to literally convince yourself and feel it in your gut. Like that's where I'm going. But when you did that, I can tell you, if you get 10 no's a week consistently, you will get to a yes eventually. Yeah. And it's so counterintuitive, right? That's
such a great way to, because 10 no's mean you're getting 10 looks. And if you're not getting any looks, I mean, yeah, that's the goal right there.
It's the looks, and there's so many things underneath what happens when someone takes a look. Not all 10 are just going to ghost you. Someone's going to give you feedback, right? You're going to find ways to you might say a thing and someone lights up in the call or on the coffee, and then you go there faster, sooner. You focus on so there's so much to learn. That's the other just element of being a founder, right? It's all learning, right? You know things, but you don't quite know things. So, well, the question was about reaching folks who are strangers. Yes, it is difficult. It's a lot of gumption, just getting ready for the rejection. They are out there, right? If they weren't, you don't have a business, right? And that's actually worth finding as well, right? Figuring out if there's really no business to be had here. Dessi, any last thoughts on this topic as we kind of conclude this section of the pod? Any thoughts for folks who are thinking about finding and digging in with customers?
Yeah, do your work, plant your seeds, and learn from everything.
Plant your seeds. I mean, that again, great words. The idea that things will come back around, the game is long. That's 1,000% true. All right. Well, we like to keep it short and sweet here. You now know all about Dessi and Mimicry Solutions. We gave you some, things to think about when it comes to finding customers. Let's wrap it up here. I just want to hit 2 or 3 things. Dessi, how can folks find you? Where should they go? How can they get involved with what you're doing?
Yeah, mimicriesolutions.com is the go-to place to find all the stuff. So we have a lot of resources out there about the industry and what we're building and just information around it, because it is a complex, very unknown topic sometimes. But also information about our team and different ways to contact us as well. So that would be the all-around go-to.
Amazing. Yeah, stay in the loop with what Dessi is building. So let me wrap things up here. So I'm Andrew, your host for the Backseat Startup Podcast. The Backseat Startup Podcast is brought to you by Startup Founder Daily. If you didn't know that, now you do. SFD, Startup Founder Daily, is a platform where you can showcase your startup and compete for free PR. And that's how we found and know Dessi. So head over to startupfounderdaily.com to submit your company and get in the mix, looking for that PR and that platform to showcase yourself. As for me, if you don't know me, I said I'm Andrew. I'm the founder of actually a startup called Day One, partnering with Startup Founder Daily to run this podcast. And what we offer is personalized coaching that's tailored to founders in their early stages, going after customers, nailing down their pitch, mapping out their next steps towards raising capital and growing their business. So for me, you can head over to joinday1.com and check out what we do and how we've helped over 500 founders to date. So with that, we'll round us out. Thank you again, Dessi. Really appreciate spending some time with us. And everyone listening, we'll see you around the next time.